Cortex Lab is not a place, it's a movement. We take ancient future technology and the human spirit and we forge something unstoppable.
Usually when we talk about building a business from the ground up, there is this heavy, almost inescapable expectation of physical machinery.
Oh, absolutely. The traditional brick and mortar mindset.
Right. You have to sign a commercial lease for a storefront. You have to buy tangible inventory that just sits in a warehouse.
Gathering dust while you hope someone buys it.
Exactly. And you hire a staff, you set up payroll, and eventually the bank loan officer just points a pen at you and says, well, there's your risk.
Yeah.
It's a massive physical and frankly terrifying undertaking.
It is incredibly intimidating. I mean, for centuries, we've basically been conditioned to believe that starting any legitimate enterprise requires immense capital. You need significant overhead and, a really high tolerance for risking your entire livelihood. The barrier to entry has traditionally been a brick wall.
But then you step into the world of the digital microeconomy, and suddenly, poof, that brick wall vanishes. The mortar is gone. The heavy inventory is gone.
Yeah, the whole landscape changes.
It really does. We are looking at a commercial landscape that is, for all intents and purposes, entirely weightless. It's a frictionless marketplace. And our mission for you today, our listener, is to explore exactly how this weightless economy actually functions in the real world.
And we have some fantastic source material to guide us through this.
We do. Today's deep dive is unpacking a really comprehensive blueprint from 2016 by Andrew Flynn. It's titled Make Money Online, Fiverr, Complete Step-by-Step Guide to Make a Full-Time Income.
It's a long title, but it delivers.
Right. And we're going to break down the exact step-by-step mechanics of building a freelance business on this specific platform. And we want to make every technical concept crystal clear without losing the strategic depth that makes this entire ecosystem tick.
The premise we're dissecting here is, honestly, it's wild when you really think about it. The foundational question of Flynn poses is whether it is actually possible to quit your day job and make a full-time living.
Which is the ultimate dream, right?
Exactly. But we are talking up to $5,000 a month, just by selling services $5 at a time.
$5 at a time. I mean, if you just do the raw math in your head, that sounds like a recipe for absolute burnout, not a sustainable full-time income.
It sounds mathematically exhausting.
Right. But to understand how that math could possibly work, we need to look at the historical explosion of this specific platform. Because Fiverr didn't just quietly arrive on the internet. It launched in 2010 as a very small, super niche marketplace for microservices.
Tiny little digital odd jobs.
Yeah. But its trajectory completely reshaped how we view digital labor.
It really did. Within just 2 years of its launch, the platform reached 1.3 million users.
Wow.
And within 3 years, the business volume had grown by over 600%.
Just think about that scale for a second. 1.3 million people in 24 months. That is the entire population of a major metropolitan city like, Dallas or San Diego, just suddenly deciding to pack up and start buying and selling digital labor in the exact same online space.
It's staggering, and it forces us to adopt a totally new analytical framework because we aren't looking at a simple side hustle here or, a temporary way to make a quick buck. We are examining a legitimate, self-sustaining microeconomy.
Right. It's an actual economy.
Yes, it is a space where a massive convergence of business seekers and business employers happens every single second of the day. This evolution signals a fundamental shift in what the internet actually is.
It's not just a library for looking up recipes or like a social club for sharing photos anymore.
No, not at all. It has become a living, breathing workspace. It's a global office building where earning a full-time living is entirely possible, but, and this is the big, but only if you understand the underlying mechanics of how the building is structured.
Okay, well, let's walk through the front doors of that building then. At its core foundation, how does this specific digital ecosystem actually operate?
At the most basic architectural level, this operates as what economists call a two-sided marketplace.
Meaning you need two distinct groups to make it work.
Exactly. You have to have independent buyers on one side and independent sellers on the other. And the platform itself, it acts purely as the connective tissue in the middle. It positions itself as the world's largest marketplace for outsourcing small or micro services. And the barrier to entry is zero. Anyone can advertise a skill, and anyone can hire someone for that skill.
The best way to visualize this, and I love this analogy, is to think of a massive digital shopping mall. But instead of big, multi-million-dollar anchor stores like Macy's or Sears taking up all the physical space, this mall is just an endless, sprawling floor filled with millions of tiny, independent kiosks.
Right, just row after row of kiosks.
Yeah. And at each one of these kiosks, a regular person is selling one highly specific skill. You stroll down one digital aisle, and there's a graphic designer sitting at their kiosk ready to sketch a logo. You walk down the next aisle, and there's a freelance writer offering to draft a blog post. Take a left, and there's a voice actor offering to record a 30-second voicemail greeting for your startup.
That analogy captures the sheer variety perfectly. And, it brings up a crucial psychological driver behind why so many people rush to set up these tiny kiosks in the first place. When you analyze the motivations of these independent sellers, according to the text, it becomes really clear that it is not purely about the baseline income.
Oh, really? Because you'd assume everyone is just there for the cash.
Of course, the money matters. But a massive draw of this microeconomy is the ability to bypass traditional corporate gatekeepers and monetize a hidden passion.
Ah, right. Because, well, if you work as a data entry clerk from 9 to 5, your company does not care if you have an amazing singing voice or, like, a talent for drawing caricatures.
They don't care at all.
You are boxed into your job description.
Exactly. But this ecosystem completely unboxes the human worker. If you have a hidden talent for creating custom podcast jingles, you don't need to move to Los Angeles, hire a talent agent, and audition for a record label.
You just open a kiosk.
You just open a kiosk. The platform provides immediate, direct access to a global market that might want exactly what you love to do. It democratizes the monetization of niche skills.
That sounds incredibly empowering, honestly.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate democratization of talent. But let's bring this back down to earth for a second, because passion alone does not pay the grocery bill.
Very true.
How do the actual logistics of getting paid work in this frictionless environment? Because I know a lot of people who have tried online gig work, and they always complain about how hard it is to actually get their money out of the platform.
Oh, it is a notorious problem in the broader gig economy. Many digital platforms use inflexible withdrawal thresholds. They will literally hold your earnings hostage until you reach a specific dollar amount, say $50 or $100.
Right. So if you only make $40 one week, you simply cannot access your own money.
Which completely defeats the purpose if you needed that $40 to pay for gas on Tuesday.
Exactly. So how does Fiverr handle it?
Well, the architecture of this specific microeconomy relies on a time-based system rather than a threshold-based system. The mechanism works like an escrow account. When a buyer orders a $5 service, they pay upfront. The platform holds that money safely. Once you, the seller, deliver the work, and the buyer marks the task as complete, the funds are officially credited to your internal account.
Okay, so the money is mine at that point.
It is yours on the ledger, yes. But you cannot withdraw it immediately. There is a mandatory 14-day clearance period.
Hold on. A 2-week waiting period for $5. That seems like a lot of friction for a frictionless marketplace. Why the delay?
It's entirely about dispute resolution and fraud prevention. The platform has to ensure that the delivered work isn't plagiarized, that the payment method used by the buyer wasn't stolen, and that no chargebacks occur. It basically builds a buffer of trust.
That makes sense from a corporate standpoint, I guess.
It does. However, the system gamifies this waiting period to encourage really high-quality work. For sellers who consistently deliver excellent results and achieve top-rated status, the algorithm actually cuts that mandatory waiting period in half. It drops it from 14 days down to just 7.
Oh, okay. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but I have to stop you there and push back on the viability of this whole setup. We established earlier that within 2 years, this digital mall had over 1 million people in it. Today, it's vastly more.
Oh yeah, millions and millions.
So if you are a brand new seller, walking into this digital mall today, setting up a completely blank kiosk right next to people who've been there for years and already have that top-rated status, isn't the competition just mathematically impossible to beat? How does a beginner not just instantly drown in that sea of millions?
That is the most common anxiety for any new entrant into a marketplace, and Flynn's analysis confronts it head-on. The reality is, a marketplace without competition is a dead marketplace. You have to accept that competition is the baseline reality here. But the counterweight to that immense competition is the sheer staggering volume of global demand.
You mean the people walking around the mall with their wallets open?
Yes, exactly. The global need for cheap, fast, micro-outsourcing is practically bottomless. Small businesses, solo entrepreneurs, students, and even massive corporations. They all need tiny digital tasks completed around the clock. Because the demand side is so voracious, a new seller who sets up shop won't be standing in a vacuum forever. The work is there.
So the pie is actually growing fast enough to feed all the new arrivals.
It is, but, and this is a massive caveat, it requires a very sober expectation of the initial grind. The blueprint makes it very clear that those early days are incredibly difficult. It requires intense hustle to get those first few buyers to take a chance on a kiosk with 0 reviews.
It's the classic catch-22. You need reviews to get jobs, but you need jobs to get reviews.
Precisely. But the mechanics dictate that once you secure those first few successful transactions, the algorithm begins to recognize you. It progressively gets easier as your momentum builds.
Which is why the idea of quitting your day job on day one is, frankly, a terrible idea.
A catastrophic idea. The strategic advice here is to treat this as a parallel track. The decision to sever your primary income stream should only even be entertained after your micro gigs have picked up serious, consistent, verifiable traction. It's a slow transition of income reliance, not some dramatic leap of faith.
Okay, that definitely tempers the whole $5,000 a month dream with some much-needed reality. So let's assume you're listening to this and you're willing to put in that initial difficult grind. Let's talk about the physical, or rather digital construction of the storefront itself. When you actually sit down at your computer to build this business, what are the irreversible realities of registration?
Well, the initial technical steps are remarkably simple. You authenticate through standard email or social logins like Facebook or Google. But nestled right in those first few minutes of setup is a massive, permanent decision: choosing your username.
Why is that permanent?
The architecture of the platform dictates that once a username is selected and registered, it is locked in forever. It cannot be edited, tweaked, or rebranded later.
Wow. Let's unpack the weight of that for a second. Choosing a username here isn't like picking a handle for a casual gaming forum. It is essentially getting a digital tattoo on your business.
That's a great way to put it.
You really have to project your long-term ambitions onto that name. I mean, if you are a 20-year-old and you think it's hilarious today to name your account SkaterDude99,
You're going to regret it.
big time. You are going to be stuck sending professional invoices and pitching corporate copywriting services to serious clients under the name SkaterDude99 a decade from now.
And that is the exact trap many beginners fall into. They treat it as a social media account rather than a corporate entity. Your username is your foundational brand identity in a highly competitive space. Once you navigate that permanent branding, you move on to visual differentiation, basically, customizing your profile. And there's a fascinating early feature mentioned in the book that was designed to solve the problem of visual anonymity.
Visual anonymity being the fact that everyone just looks like a tiny square box of text on a screen.
Exactly. To break through that text-heavy, sterile environment, the platform introduced an internal application called Fiverr Faces. It would take a standard photograph of your face and digitally convert it into a stylized caricature to use as your profile picture.
Wait, why a caricature instead of just a professional headshot on a white background, like LinkedIn?
Because a caricature immediately communicates approachability, creativity, and a slight sense of informal fun, which perfectly matches the ethos of a $5 microservice. It makes the seller seem human and distinct. But the true genius of this feature isn't the picture itself, it's the transaction behind it.
What do you mean?
To get this caricature, you actually have to pay for it within the platform's ecosystem, and the price you pay is entirely dictated by how fast you want it delivered.
Ah, so right out of the gate, before you even sell a single thing, the platform forces you to act as a buyer.
Exactly. You are instantly educated on how the internal economy works. You learn firsthand that in the gig economy, speed is a premium commodity. If I want my caricature delivered in 24 hours, I have to pay a higher price. If I am willing to wait a week, it costs the baseline $5. It's basically an interactive tutorial masked as a profile setup.
That is brilliant behavioral conditioning. You experience the exact workflow your future clients will experience. And that workflow is a very specific 5-step transaction cycle that becomes the heartbeat of your daily business operations. Let's outline that loop clearly. What does that cycle look like from a mechanical standpoint?
It operates in a closed, unchangeable loop. Step 1. You deliver the completed digital file to the client. Step 2. The client reviews the work and actively clicks a button to mark the order as complete.
So they have to manually approve it.
Yes. Then step 3. The platform's escrow system officially recognizes the payment and credits your internal ledger. Step 4. You wait the mandatory clearance period, 14 days, or 7 if you're top rated. And finally, step 5. The funds unlock, and you initiate a withdrawal to your external bank account.
Deliver complete, credit, wait, withdraw.
Deliver complete, credit, withdraw.
Deliver complete, credit, withdraw. It's the assembly line of the digital age. So now we have the architecture down. We understand the two-sided marketplace. We have our permanent digital tattoo of a username. We have our fun caricature. And we understand the assembly line of getting paid. But having a beautifully constructed kiosk in the middle of a mall with millions of other kiosks means absolutely nothing if nobody walks down your specific aisle.
Right. You're just talking to yourself.
Exactly. Which brings us to a massive pivot in our deep dive. The actual strategy of getting seen. This is chapter 4 stuff.
This is where the fantasy of passive income collides hard with the reality of running a business. The people who are actually hitting those astronomical goals, making $5,000 a month on $5 transactions, are not passive participants.
They aren't just sitting there waiting.
No, they do not just set up their profile and wait for the platform to hand them customers. They operate aggressive, sophisticated advertising machines. And the foundation of that machine is mastering SEO.
Okay, search engine optimization. That is one of those tech buzzwords that gets thrown around so much it almost loses its meaning. It sounds like a dark art performed by computer hackers in basements. Let's strip the jargon away. How does SEO actually function inside this specific digital mall?
Think of the main search bar on the platform as an incredibly literal, slightly unimaginative librarian. When a buyer comes to the platform, they don't browse every single aisle. They walk up to the librarian in the search bar and ask for exactly what they want. They type in custom 30-second podcast intro music.
Right.
SEO is simply the practice of ensuring that the digital labels on your gig match the exact vocabulary the buyer is typing. The algorithm scans the metadata, the titles, and the descriptions of millions of gigs. If your gig is titled Fun Audio Stuff, the librarian will ignore you completely.
Because it doesn't match the query.
Exactly. But if your gig's backend tags and titles specifically say Custom Podcast Intro Music, the librarian pulls your gig from the stacks and puts it right in front of the buyer.
It's essentially predicting the psychological intent of your customer. If you sell red apples, you cannot label your store crisp tree fruit harvesting because nobody wakes up and types that into a search bar. You have to call them apples. You have to speak the customer's language, not your own internal industry jargon.
That is the perfect distillation of it. But here is where the ecosystem proves just how self-contained and bizarrely efficient it really is. What happens if you are a brilliant graphic designer, but you are completely technologically illiterate when it comes to SEO? You don't know what metadata is, you don't know how to research keywords, and you don't know how the algorithm works.
Oh, this might be the most fascinating operational irony in the entire blueprint. If you don't know how to optimize your gig to be found on the marketplace, you can just go into the marketplace and hire an SEO expert for $5 to optimize your gig for you.
It is a closed loop of microcommerce. You are literally outsourcing the optimization of your own outsourcing business to a competitor within the same platform.
It's like Inception. I am going to use Fiverr to hire a Fiverr expert so that my Fiverr business can perform better on Fiverr.
Exactly.
It's a self-sustaining digital terrarium. But relying solely on the platform's internal search bar is risky, right? If the algorithm changes, you could disappear overnight. You have to pull people in from the outside world.
Absolutely. The most robust businesses build external funnels to drive traffic back to their kiosks. The blueprint highlights 2 highly effective external marketing pillars. The first is strategic blogging.
Like writing a personal diary.
No, the goal isn't just to write a diary, it's to establish authority. If you sell logo design, you start a free blog, like on Blogger, discussing color theory, brand identity, and design trends. Or, even more efficiently, you approach established bloggers in the business niche and offer to write high-quality guest posts for them for free.
Wait, for free? What's the return on investment for writing a free article for someone else's blog?
The author bio at the bottom. You provide the established blog with free, valuable content, and in exchange, you get a link at the bottom that says, if you need a professional logo design today, click here to visit my digital storefront. You are siphoning a fraction of their massive established audience directly into your sales funnel.
Oh, I see. You are building a digital highway that leads straight to your front door. Okay, what is the second external pillar?
Utilizing digital press releases. This involved crafting a highly compelling, newsworthy narrative about your specific microservice and distributing it to online tabloids, niche media outlets, and PR aggregators.
Okay, wait, hold on. A press release. When I think of a press release, I think of Apple announcing a new iPhone or like a pharmaceutical company announcing a new drug trial. Why on earth would an online tabloid care that some guy named Skater Dude 99 is offering to write 200 words for $5?
They wouldn't. They wouldn't care at all, which is why the strategy requires narrative spin. You cannot just announce your existence. You have to manufacture a hook. Instead of saying, I write articles, the press release might read, Digital Nomad Friends worldwide travel exclusively through $5 microgigs.
Oh, that's clever.
Right. The media outlet gets a quirky human interest story about the modern economy, and you get a backlink that drives thousands of curious readers directly to your profile. And again, if you don't know how to write or distribute a press release, you just hire a PR specialist on the platform to do it for you.
Look at the sheer volume of roles we are talking about here. This completely shatters the illusion of what it means to be a freelancer.
It really does. It forces us to confront the psychological reality of the modern gig worker. To actually achieve that $5,000 a monthly benchmark, you cannot simply be a passive laborer who clocks in, completes a task, and clocks out. You must simultaneously operate as the chief executive officer, setting the overarching strategy. You are the production line executing the actual labor. You are the marketing director analyzing SEO trends. You are the PR firm pitching narratives to the media.
You are an entire corporate org chart compressed into one human being sitting at a laptop in their living room. It is exhausting just thinking about it. So let's talk about the fuel that keeps this one-person corporation running, the pricing strategy. We have to address the elephant in the room. The platform's historical identity is literally built around the $5 baseline.
Yes, the $5 transaction is the foundational DNA of the entire ecosystem, but Flynn's strategic blueprint provides a very strict, uncompromising definition of what a $5 service should actually entail. The $5 price tag is exclusively meant for incredibly simple, low-friction tasks that take absolutely no more than 1 hour to perform from start to finish.
Okay, let's run a quick thought experiment on that math. Let's say I am incredibly efficient and I complete one task every single hour. In a standard 8-hour workday, I complete 8 gigs. That is $40 a day. If I work 30 days a month with no weekends off, that totals $1,200 a month.
And you're exhausted.
Right. We are miles away from a $5,000 full-time income. You literally run out of hours in the day. The math simply does not scale.
The math completely breaks down if you remain trapped at the baseline. The blueprint explicitly acknowledges this ceiling. The $5 gig is not the destination, it is the entry-level loss leader. If you are providing services that require significant time investment, say, editing a 10-minute instructional video with graphics and sound mixing, you absolutely cannot charge $5 and survive.
Yeah.
You have to scale your pricing upwards.
But how do you calibrate that? If I am a video editor and I decide my time is worth $100, but there are 500 other editors charging $20, my kiosk is going to be a ghost town.
This requires rigorous competitive analysis. You cannot price your services in a vacuum. You have to analyze the current market rates of other sellers who are at your exact skill level and have a similar number of reviews.
Because if you overprice, you're ignored.
Exactly. But if you underprice, you devalue your own labor and signal to buyers that your work might be low quality. The blueprint's recommended path is incremental escalation. You start slightly below market rate to capture initial volume and build a portfolio of 5-star reviews. Once your reputation is established, you slowly, strategically raise the rent.
You essentially build a fortress of good reviews, and then you charge your premium for the safety of that fortress. But securing those first few vital customers to build the fortress requires some serious hustle. And the blueprint outlines several promotional schemes that honestly caught me completely off guard.
The psychology of consumer behavior doesn't change just because the transaction is entirely digital. People are universally wired to respond to incentives, discounts, and perceived value. The blueprint outlines 4 incredibly aggressive promotional tactics to hook and retain buyers in this microeconomy.
Let's walk through the arsenal. What is the first tactic?
The first is a classic volume discount, offering a flat 10% price reduction if a client orders your services in bulk.
The wholesale approach. So if you buy one article, it's $5. If you buy 10 articles at once, I'll do it for $45. It incentivizes the buyer to consolidate their outsourcing with you instead of spreading it around.
Exactly. The second tactic utilizes loyalty thresholds. You offer a completely free service once a client crosses a specific ordering milestone, like their 15th or 20th order.
This is literally the digital equivalent of a punch card at a local coffee shop.
Yeah,
Buy 9 coffees, get the 10th one free.
that's exactly what it is.
It creates a psychological switching cost. If a buyer is on their 8th order with you, they won't switch to a new writer because they know they're only 2 orders away from a freebie.
Precisely. It locks in their future behavior. The third tactic is collaborative cross-promotion. You strategically partner with another seller on the platform who offers a complementary skill.
Give me an example of how that works in practice.
Let's say you are a copywriter who writes website text and you partner with a web designer. You create a bundled promotion. If you buy my copywriting gig, I will give you a special discount code for my partner's web design gig. And they do the exact same for you.
That is fantastic. It's digital cross-pollination. You are essentially merging your 2 customer bases and sharing the traffic without having to pay a single dime for advertising.
It's brilliant.
But it's the fourth tactic that I really need to drill down into because it fundamentally breaks my brain. The blueprint actually suggests giving away physical, personalized merchandise as a gift to regular customers.
It does. Mailing a physical branded item like a coffee mug, a t-shirt, or a mouse pad to a high-volume client as a token of appreciation.
Okay, let's look at the financial reality of this.
Yeah.
Let's say I write an article for $5. The platform takes its mandatory cut, usually around 20%, so my actual take-home pay is $4.
Right.
If I then go to a custom printing website, spend $10 to print my logo on a coffee mug, and spend another $5 on shipping to mail it to my client, I have just spent $15 to celebrate a $4 gig. I am operating at a massive, catastrophic financial loss. Why would any business blueprint advocate for willingly destroying your own profit margin on a micro gig?
Because you are looking at the transaction in isolation rather than looking at the relationship over time. To understand this tactic, we have to look through the lens of a sophisticated corporate metric known as customer lifetime value, or CLV. In a highly competitive, frictionless marketplace, acquiring a new customer is the hardest and most expensive part of the business.
Okay, map the CLV math out for me. How does losing $15 make sense?
Let's say this particular client runs a busy marketing agency. They need 3 small articles written every single week. Over the course of a year, that is roughly 150 orders. At a $4 profit per order, that single client generates $600 of annual revenue for your tiny kiosk. They are a massive asset. But at any moment, they could easily switch to a different writer who charges the exact same amount.
Because there is zero friction preventing them from leaving.
Exactly. So how do you build friction? How do you build unshakable loyalty in a faceless digital void? You break the digital barrier. You take a one-time $15 loss to mail them a physical coffee mug that sits on their physical desk in the real world. Every single morning when they drink their coffee, they see your logo. It makes them feel uniquely valued. It transforms a sterile digital transaction into a human relationship.
Oh, wow.
They will never switch to another writer because you are the one who sent them a gift. Taking a strategic, calculated loss up front to secure hundreds of dollars in recurring revenue is not destroying your margin. It is the smartest acquisition cost you can pay.
That is a masterclass in perspective. It completely shifts the paradigm from I'm selling a $5 task to I am acquiring a $600 long-term asset. It proves that the mechanics of big business absolutely apply to the microeconomy. So let's ground all of these high-level strategies by looking at a specific real-world execution. The blueprint highlights the freelance writing niche specifically. How does a writing gig actually function within these parameters?
Freelance writing is one of the most robust pillars of this entire ecosystem, and the most common iteration of this is the SEO article writing gig. The standard parameters usually dictate delivering between 100 to 500 words for that baseline $5 to $10 price point.
What does the actual workflow between the buyer and the writer look like here?
It is a highly structured exchange. The buyer is usually trying to build their own external website's ranking on Google. They don't just ask for a generic article. They provide the writer with a very specific topic and, more importantly, a mandatory list of target keywords that absolutely must be seamlessly integrated into the text.
So the buyer provides the raw architectural materials, the keywords, and the writer's job is to build a readable, grammatically correct house around those materials without making it look forced.
Precisely. And the strategic advice for sellers in this niche is to ruthlessly specialize. The blueprint warns against being a generalist. You should explicitly broadcast the niches you dominate. If you have a background in software development, you advertise technical writing. If you know everything about fitness, you advertise health writing.
Because it builds trust.
Yes, it signals authority to the buyer, but it also allows you to write faster because you already know the subject matter, which effectively increases your hourly rate.
That makes total sense. And that brings us to a critical juncture in our deep dive. We have built the storefront, we have optimized the SEO, we have instituted our pricing strategies and our cross-promotions. The machine is humming. But now we have to talk about how incredibly fragile this entire machine really is. We need to explore the mistakes, the pitfalls, and honestly, the terrifying dark side of this ecosystem. And it all revolves around one singular mechanism, the rating system.
Tyranny is genuinely the only appropriate word to describe the rating system on these platforms. In a frictionless digital marketplace where buyers cannot see your face, they can't shake your hand or visit your physical office, trust is the only currency that matters, and that trust is entirely quantified by a star rating.
And the margins for error are unimaginably razor-thin.
They are functionally non-existent. The blueprint explicitly states that to remain viable, a seller must maintain an aggregate review score between 4.5 and 5 stars. If you fall below that threshold, the algorithm essentially decides you are a liability.
Think about how insane that standard is. I mean, in any academic setting, a 4.0 average is a straight A student. It is excellence. On this platform, if your average drops to a 4.0, you are functionally invisible. The algorithm buries your kiosk in the darkest, deepest basement of the digital mall where no buyer will ever find you.
It is an unforgiving binary. You are either perfect or you are obsolete. And because this star rating is so powerful, it creates massive incentives to manipulate the system. This intense pressure cooker led to one of the most shocking factual examples in the entire blueprint. It details an incident where the microeconomy collided violently with one of the largest megacorporations on the planet.
You are talking about the Amazon lawsuit. Break down exactly what happened there because it is staggering.
It is a watershed moment in the history of the gig economy. Amazon, a trillion-dollar behemoth whose entire retail empire relies on the perceived trustworthiness of customer reviews, filed a massive lawsuit against 11,114 individual sellers on Fiverr.
Over 1,000 independent people sitting at their laptops suddenly facing the legal wrath of Amazon's corporate lawyers. What were these sellers doing that threatened Amazon so much?
They were weaponizing the microeconomy to manufacture fake trust. These sellers had set up kiosks explicitly offering to write fraudulent reviews. For $5, they would write a glowing 5-star review for an author's self-published book they had never read, or a 5-star review for a physical product they had never touched.
Wow.
Conversely, they would accept $5 from a competitor to write a devastating 1-star review to sabotage a rival product.
They were literally running a black market for trust.
Yeah.
They were selling lies for $5.
Exactly. And Amazon recognized that if consumers stopped believing the star ratings on their website, their entire retail empire would collapse. So they went nuclear. They tracked down the IP addresses of these gig workers and sued them to protect the integrity of their own algorithm.
It is a terrifying illustration of how interconnected these digital systems are.
Mm-hmm.
The blueprint, obviously, issues a massive warning here.
It stresses in the absolute strongest terms that anyone entering this space must fiercely guard their operational ethics. You must categorically refuse any request that breaches the terms of service of another platform. Participating in review manipulation, academic cheating, or copyright infringement will not just get your kiosk permanently banned. It can open you up to catastrophic real-world legal liability.
So on one side, you have the threat of corporate lawsuits if you break the rules. But on the other side, even if you play entirely by the rules, you face an equally terrifying threat from within the mall itself. The blueprint details a phenomenon of pure cutthroat sabotage.
This is where the intense competition morphs into active hostility. Because the algorithm relies so heavily on that 4.5 to 5-star metric, your competitors know exactly how to destroy you. The blueprint warns that you might suddenly receive a purchase from a buyer who is impossible to please, who demands endless revisions, and ultimately leaves a scathing 1-star review that tanks your average.
And the twist is, it's not a real client.
No. It is a rival seller operating under a burner account. If they can artificially drag your rating down from a 4.9 to a 4.3, the algorithm buries you, your traffic plummets, and they gladly swoop in to absorb all the clients you just lost. It is digital assassination.
That is incredibly dark. It's corporate espionage at the $5 level.
Mm-hmm.
If you suspect a competitor is actively sabotaging you, what is the recourse?
The only recourse is to compile evidence communication logs, proof of delivered work, and appeal directly to the platform's customer support to intervene and remove the fraudulent review. But what is perhaps even more disturbing than active sabotage is how the blueprint advises you to handle a genuinely dissatisfied client.
This is the part of the analysis that really exposes the raw psychological toll of this work. If a real client genuinely dislikes your work and is preparing to leave a devastating 2-star review, the blueprint outlines a series of what can only be described as desperate operational measures.
The advice highlights the immense power imbalance between the buyer and the seller. The first recommended tactic is pure mitigation. The seller is advised to actively reach out to the angry client and negotiate. You essentially plead with them, offering endless free revisions or extra work, begging them to leave at least a mediocre 3-star or 4-star review rather than a 1-star review.
You are forced to grovel just to maintain algorithmic mediocrity.
Yeah.
But it gets so much more extreme than that. If the client refuses to negotiate and that 1-star review is incoming, what is the nuclear option?
The nuclear option is the force cancel. The platform allows sellers to unilaterally cancel an order before the review is posted.
Wait, let me make sure the mechanics of this are absolutely clear. You spend an hour writing an article, you deliver the work, the client hates it and is going to tank your rating. Instead of accepting the bad review, you push a button to cancel the entire transaction, the client gets their money back. The transaction vanishes from the system, which means the client can no longer leave a review, but it also means you do not get paid.
That is exactly how it works. You willingly choose to take a 100% financial loss on your own time, labor, and expertise, entirely to protect the algorithm's perception of your perfection. You erase your own labor to save your digital reputation.
The psychological weight of that is just staggering. You aren't just working for a client. You are working in constant existential fear of the algorithm. It forces a dynamic where the seller literally has no choice but to drastically over-deliver on every single order just to create a buffer of goodwill.
Over-delivering ceases to be a strategy to impress. It becomes a defensive mechanism to survive. You provide 800 words when they paid for 500. You provide 3 logo revisions when they only paid for 1. You are constantly sacrificing your own margins to appease the star rating system.
Before we move to synthesize all of this, let's touch on the self-inflicted wounds. Beyond sabotage and angry clients, what are the purely operational pitfalls that the blueprint warns new sellers to avoid?
The analysis highlights 2 major operational errors. The first is the danger of generic positioning. Many desperate new sellers will create a kiosk that simply says, "I will write anything you want."
Which seems logical if you're desperate. You want to cast the widest net possible to catch any stray fish.
It seems logical, but it is fatal in a marketplace driven by specific intent. If a buyer needs a highly technical manual written for a piece of medical software, they are not going to trust someone who claims they can write anything. Claiming to be an expert in everything signals to the buyer that you are an expert in absolutely nothing. You have to plant a flag in a specific niche.
And the second major error.
The second error is capacity mismanagement, basically, biting off more than you can process. Because the early days are so slow, when a seller finally gains algorithmic traction, they might suddenly wake up to 20 orders in a single day. The natural instinct is to accept them all to capture the revenue.
But if each order takes an hour and you have 20 orders due in 24 hours, you are physically incapable of fulfilling the contracts. The system collapses.
Exactly. Rushing leads to terrible quality, which leads to 1-star reviews, which leads to the death of the kiosk. The blueprint advises strict capacity control. But if you do find yourself overwhelmed, it provides a very specific communication strategy.
What is the protocol for drowning in orders?
You never unilaterally cancel an order just because you are busy, as that damages your completion rate metric. Instead, you proactively message every single client, transparently explain the backlog, and formally request a time extension.
Communication over cancellation. You treat the buyer like a human being, explain the delay, and manage their expectations.
Precisely. And this leads directly into the overarching philosophical golden rule of the entire blueprint. Regardless of the exhaustion, regardless of the difficult clients, the mandate is clear. You must inject your absolute best effort into the work, even if the price tag is only $5.
Because it's so easy to look at a $5 task and think, I'm only making $4 on this. I'm going to give him $4 worth of effort. But why is that a trap?
Because the $5 is just the immediate liquid compensation. The true compensation is the data you are generating. Every piece of high-quality work builds your portfolio. It earns you platform badges. It generates glowing testimonials. You are subsidizing your own future credibility. You work cheaply at the very beginning to accrue the undeniable proof of competence that allows you to charge premium rates in the future.
We have covered an immense amount of conceptual ground today. We have walked every aisle of this digital mall, from the architecture of the platform to the psychology of the pricing, all the way down to the dark alleys of algorithmic sabotage. Let's synthesize this incredibly dense blueprint into our core takeaways. If you take nothing else away from this deep dive, remember these 5 critical pillars.
Pillar number 1 involves managing your timeline expectations. The structural reality is that it takes merely 10 minutes to register an account and build a storefront, but it requires immense patience, grueling consistency, and a tolerance for early failure to actually generate momentum. The friction has been removed from starting, but the friction of succeeding is higher than ever.
Pillar number 2 redefines what you are actually selling. Your gig profile is not a resume. It is an active, persuasive sales pitch. It is the visual and textual display window of your storefront. If your caricature doesn't pop or your description is vague, buyers will simply keep walking.
Pillar number 3 emphasizes that marketing is a mandatory, integrated function of the job. You cannot rely passively on the platform's internal traffic. You must master the mechanics of SEO to speak the algorithm's language. You must build external funnels through strategic blogging, and you must creatively leverage public relations to siphon attention toward your specific niche.
Pillar number 4 is about survival. You must defend your digital reputation with ruthless vigilance. That means constantly over-delivering to ensure a flawless 5-star rating, maintaining strict ethical boundaries to avoid catastrophic terms of service violations like the Amazon lawsuit, and understanding that the algorithm is entirely unforgiving.
And the final pillar, number 5, is the concept of limitless lateral expansion. Unlike a physical business where opening a second location requires a second bank loan, the digital microeconomy allows infinite parallel scaling. If you master the mechanics, there is absolutely nothing stopping you from simultaneously operating a copywriting kiosk, a voiceover kiosk, and a graphic design kiosk, aggregating multiple streams of micro-revenue.
Which brings us to the ultimate overarching question that this entire analysis forces us to confront. When we look at this entire blueprint from a bird's-eye view, we see a system that has fundamentally dismantled the traditional corporate structure, only to compress all of those exact same corporate anxieties into the mind of a single individual. You are the visionary CEO. You are the exhausted assembly line worker. You are the frantic PR manager. You are a hostage negotiator dealing with sabotaging competitors.
It is a profound shift in the burden of labor, which leaves us with a fascinating paradox to consider about the future of work. In this hyper-individualized, perfectly frictionless marketplace where you can monetize any passion at any time, are we finally achieving ultimate professional freedom? Or have we just willingly engineered a system where we are working 5 distinctly stressful corporate jobs simultaneously, all for $5 at a time?
At the very beginning of our conversation, we contrasted the heavy, terrifying machinery of a physical brick-and-mortar business. The leases, the inventory, the banks, with the promise of a weightless, frictionless digital landscape. But after exploring the absolute tyranny of maintaining a perfect algorithmic score, the constant looming threat of invisible competitors, and the immense psychological load of being a one-person megacorporation, I'm realizing that the heavy machinery never actually disappeared. The weight didn't go away. It just changed forms. The heavy machinery is now the algorithm. And that frictionless, weightless marketplace, it might just be the most demanding, unforgiving boss you will ever work for. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.
You know, Cortex Lab started as an idea. But you, everyone watching, you made it a family, views or followers.